So, welcome back, guys. I'm here with Brett. Brett is one of the original San Jose Barbell members from like 2014, early 2014,
Yeah, you know, actually,
late 2013.
maybe it was second year because I was at the second year anniversary.
So 2014.
Okay, 2014.
And Brett has been coming in and working out for the majority of that time here, but also doing stuff, on his own, when you moved out to Sunnyvale, right? That's not an easy drive. So the most interesting thing, and this is what prompted me to ask Brett, the most interesting thing to me is not when people lose weight. It's when people become a different person and the weight never comes back on. And I'm gonna let you talk because I'm more interested in hearing your like thoughts as you went through each phase.
Yeah.
But that was very interesting to me because it wasn't like it was a straight shot, smooth sailing.
Yeah. Not by any means.
We've had many, many conversations in this building, and then finally, and you had successes,
Yeah.
along the way. But then finally, I think it was like right around the beginning of the pandemic,
Yeah.
like then you became a completely different person. And that's what we always talk about is like, you're not trying to improve you have to change your identity and become a different person. Because the person who's lean all year round and they work, that's not the same person as before. The person who's overweight and has trouble saying no to too much food or skipping workouts, that person can't make the decisions that you make. And so I'm interested, we always hear like the coaches and like the science. But what I really want to hear from you is kind of like your thoughts as you go through each of those moments and, the more practical side of it. Theory and science and all this is all well and good, but experience is the greatest teacher. So I'm going to let you take it away and we can start even further back, like, even prior to when you were San Jose Barbell, because you lost a bunch of weight by starting to run.
Yeah.
When you were still overseas. Or was that
the
here?
deeper running came here? Did that because I still sucked at running and I was trying to. It's overseas in Singapore. I had started doing triathlons, and the running was my worst part. So when I moved here, I did a couple of half marathons. At the time, think I was going to get better at running, which I did for a while and lost weight.
What was your weight at the starting point of what? Let's go back to that first moment. Go back to you found yourself at X amount of weight, and then you decided, I don't like this. I want to do something different. What was that?
So that moment has happened a number of times across my life, to be honest. From a kid, I became a big kid pretty quickly, and my parents fed me well. I'm not blaming them by any means. We had great childhood, I made a lot of opportunities. I guess I became addicted to sugar as a kid. I understand that really does have an element, right? And some people like savory taste, sweet was my taste. So I've been with that over and over throughout my life. I was always being relatively athletic, just never been able to get into that shape that athleticism or true athleticism comes with. In fact, I remember early on coming in here, there was like, how do your cardio totally is different than what your body looks like.
Yeah.
And that's been the thing that's really carried me throughout my life, is that aspect of having a strong cardio system and go.
That's really good. I want to make a little side note on that. That's why I always tell people, like, you don't have to lose weight. I think the most important qualities to have are you have to be strong. That regulates all kinds of hormonal things. So you want to have strength. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to be huge, but it just means you need to have strength and you need to express it however you feel like it. Number two, I think you got to have wind.
Yeah.
So, and you, even from like the very early days, you always were very good at, number one, pushing yourself and getting winded, but also,
Staying in the way.
sustaining that.
And the big thing with that over life, as I've learned, is that a lot of people start and they push as hard as they can begin with, right? And they go out too fast, too hard to begin with, and they can't sustain. And so it's that understanding of yourself and your wind capability to be able to say, okay, I can get there over time. If I'm needing to do this for X amount of time, this is the pace that I can do, that I can finish as good, if not better, than how I start. And the times in my life where I've failed is, again, where I pushed myself to go really hard, really fast to begin with. Small example, in high school, big kid, I qualified to run in the cross country, to represent the school in cross country. And when I did that, my way I qualified, I just started off not planning to go fast. I think I was even going to get there. I went out and saying, I know I'm going to be able to do this. And I passed all these other people who I knew were faster than me, and I get there. So I get to the race finally, and all these people just dash out in front of me. And what do? I follow them. I try to keep up with them. I race their race, not my race. Happened to me again when I tried to do my first 100K bike ride at Singapore. Tried to go with the past guys at the front, broke, and got dropped off the end of the pack, anyone who's ridden. And that element of understanding yourself is huge in this aspect. And I think, and I'll come over this a number of times, I think the mental health and the psychology approach to it is as important, if not as more important, than the physical approach. To your point earlier of the person who's overweight, can't make those decisions, etc. More often than not, it's something that's going on up here that's triggering that. And so that element to get right, and because you said, what was that moment? And the desire, that initial question you said, if I don't want to look like this, I don't want to be overweight. I did that a number of times. I mean, I was up and down as a child, and mostly up, but down at certain times. But the things that then switched were psychological more so than not being able to break some of those psychological habits rather than physical habits. And so, in that early pandemic thing, there were a couple of elements that changed my mind and said, get right up here, and just being able to do that piece, that was the switch, not just the decision, but the allowance and that element to truly understand, well, what drives me to these things? Right? Why do I binge? Why do I skip? What are the things that when I decide I don't want to go to and so I think that's you asked, from the process perspective, that's it. That really was that switch.
Let's put some numbers on the timeline. Like, what'd you start off with when you was first starting to lose weight?
Well, I'll say my largest, I was 26 shortly after my son had been. I was 305 pounds. And I cut down from there to around about 270, 280. I just, for a lot of my late 20s and my 30s in that 270, 280 frame. I dipped down a couple of times throughout that. And then in Singapore, I went to the gym. Right. I was a Christmas present by my wife at the time, my ex-wife, who gave me 12 trainer sessions. And that kind of changes. So that point of strength, I'd always been big, but I'd never been as strong as me. Get the understanding of weightlifting at a young age. And so that was kind of, I think, the first catalyst that brought me down up there. But just before that, I'd been in China, and I was working at the gym myself, just the instruction. I dropped weight down to 131. couple of times. Sorry, 230.
240.
Yeah, 230, 240. Sorry.
Yeah.
Grew up in New Zealand where 100 kilograms is big, and
Yeah.
above that is even really big. So that was too big. But yeah, 230, 240.
Yeah.
And
That's about the weight that you came here.
yeah, I got up to that when I came here. So right before that, like you said, I had got into half marathons, and I got down to about 194.
Okay.
It was very lean, thin, again, not really strong 194. But that had been the lightest I'd been since I was, probably since I was 15, 16.
Yeah. And that was like early 30s?
That was, it was early 30s. No, late 30s. It was kind of late 30s. So I'd say 37, 38 at that. I came in here, I'd come back to about 230, 240 pounds, probably. Maybe even creep to 245.
And that was 2014.
Yeah, about that. And yeah, I remember the first time I tried to come in, turned away because I was 5 minutes late, which I totally appreciate now. But LJ said,
who was
sorry.
that, LJ?
LJ? Yeah, LJ said, sorry, when we've already started, you have to be here in advance and blah, blah, blah. It'd be dangerous to let you in now. I'm like, when are you going to do it next?
Yeah.
Could have walked away and maybe none
Yeah.
of this would have happened. But yeah, I remember sitting down and saying, no, I'm not going to be able to do what you guys do. Dislocated both shoulders.
Yeah, you had a
done
lot
my
of
knees in.
aches, injuries.
And that was the other thing. And I talk about clicks, right? So the first thing was starting to get my brain right here and understand myself. And it is truly understanding yourself. And I get a little psychology here, right? We all have the things that make us really good. And in those counterbalance some things with the not so good. We try to challenge or rage against the not and shut it down, etc. Where sometimes that's actually what allows us to be as good as we are.
Yeah.
Areas and not being able to honor that balance and that equal part of yourself is kind of one of those things that prevents us from being able to be, hey, well, okay, if I'm able to be my full self all the time, then I can be my best.
Yeah.
And I can make decisions and do the time to spend at the gym. But the other click was, what did I say my injuries were?
Shoulder,
Shoulders and knee.
knee,
Those are the main ones. Ankles a little bit as
feet.
well. I'd always learned this big muscles.
Yeah.
Right. As a big guy, I carried around. So I had pretty big muscles, but that's what I always focused on. And so when I get too big, the big muscles, the small muscles. And so those were those kind of areas, those weakness areas that had been built up over the years of my body. And so during the pandemic and kind of really that was when you were focusing on the ATG method and really focusing, spending time on things that weren't involved with us and weren't involved with
focusing on the weak links.
right? And so those two, and then there was two other things that happened at the same time. I'd had that happen. I'd injured myself. I'd kind of had an injury with my shoulder, and so I was going to do rehab. And so I went into rehab and had this therapist, and she was trying to do things. She's like, raise your shoulder muscle. It's like, okay, and I put it up. She said, no, don't pull it up, raise it up. And there's a difference between using your trapezius muscles to pull up your shoulder and then using your lats and all the scalia muscles to be able to lift your shoulder up. Because I had dislocated my shoulders, I'd never really gone back into that. That area was so undeveloped that I couldn't do it. So working with you and saying, hey, knowing this now, what do we do to fix that? So that was kind of that piece. And then the fourth one was her element of, well, part of the reason why you got this injury is because the core wasn't strong.
Yeah.
And so I downloaded this little app called 6-Pack in 30 Days, which you're never going to get unless you already have a 4.5 pack. But they had like an intermediate and beginner and intermediate and advanced level. And at that point, it was free and you could get access to all of the different levels. And so I have that still because I got it. But I started following that and spending time on those areas that were not my strength rather than trying to continue to build those strength areas.
Yeah.
Those were the four things that at that time combined to kind of make that change, right? As now I think differently about myself, becoming that different person, a person that can understand, all the components that make you good, etc.
So, I mean, we always want, and you know what? I have to check myself. I asked you, like, what was that moment or what were those moments? And
The
then
one magical thing, right?
there is not one magical thing because, even as I think back, I'm like, well, there was a lot that we went over the years of like form and technique. Your form and technique continuously improved and you mastered the movements over time. You mastered your body over time. It wasn't a one thing. And so that's more like, if you want to say like tactical or like technical or knowledge or information. Now we kind of separate like the information from like the psychological development. And that's just what comes to mind is like, it's not one moment and it's not one thing. Because one of the things, and so just to put more numbers on it, so in the span of about 10 years here, you went from 240-ish down to what are you?
I was 196.
197 at sub 10% body fat.
Sub 10%. Yeah, I would be nice if I wasn't at the point, because I remember I came in and talked to you, like, hey, I've cut down, because I got down to about 194.
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, now I need to do something here.
Yeah.
I've always had big legs.
Yeah.
Fat head. You have to carry all that weight around, your legs become big, right? People have always been
Always
jealous
had
of
to
my calves.
Yeah.
And what I always used to say, I wish my rest of my body looked like my calves.
Yeah.
And finally, it's kind of there.
Yeah. Yeah. So 240-ish with, aches and pains, shoulders, knees, hip, all the typical stuff, a little bit of feet stuff.
Yeah.
To
200-ish.
200, sub 10%, which is ridiculous. No aches and pains. You can describe how you feel now at, how old are you now?
50.
So at 50, I'm going to make an assumption here and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like feeling better, more athletic, more mobile, more like vigorous than at any point before.
Pretty much, yeah. Even when I look back as a kid, right? There was times of vitality as a child and things like that, and maybe under 10 or 11 or 12 or something like that. But yeah, beyond that,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, I aches and pains. I still have some issues. I feel blah 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 and things like that, but they don't prevent me. And I had a knee injury, just stupidly did something, and then tried to fix it myself and aggravated it further, and it took time to come back from. But again, it was a matter of giving it time and.
And you have more understanding now. One of the things that we worked on in the pandemic was I really focused on like, hey, if you have an injury, there's two things we got to do. We got to fill it with blood. So lots of high rep work.
Yep.
Second thing is we got to find what is the weak link. And the weak links are common for most people because we tend to live the same type of life.
Yeah.
Physically at least. So get tons of blood to heal the stuff and then bring up the weak links slowly. And that is the formula.
Yeah.
But we're still going to run into things and find out things, even if you're strong. Like I've had, things that I've worked on over the last 10 years, even after once I, figured things out. But it's like, that's where the psychological and perspective side comes in. Whereas like most people, when they get an injury, oh my God, it hurts. I don't know. I can't do anything. They don't do anything about it. Except in your case, in my case, and what, we've always tried to teach is like, it's information and it's not the end of the world. Like you're doing stuff that nobody else can do. Like 99% of people can't do the stuff you can do. You're pushing the limits. You're going to find out, it may happen, it may not happen, but you know how to fix it. And even like for me, I had to not play basketball for a very long, like 18 months.
Which you love. And this guy, if you don't know already, loves basketball. Loves being able to dunk. and surprise the heck out of people that can dunk on them. It is like that makes Rambez weak when he does that.
That makes more than a week. But so like having to sit out from that, it required like, and to now where I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like there's a million, I can do everything else except for dunk. Who cares?
Yeah.
I can pull the sled. I can still work out. I can still look how I want. I can move around. Like, you know, even so, I had some slight back things during the pandemic. That's a podcast for another time, but where that type of pain would have kept most people in bed or like sitting down, since built up the strength, I was still able to coach and do everything, you know, and so this understanding, this is another, like, there's a lot of like threads in this conversation, but one of them is like, it's better to, number one is like your perspective on injury or pain has to be one of, it's not that big, it's not the end of the world. Plus, if you know how to fix it, which you know now, it's fine. Things will get better. And also, it's better to be strong and athletic and in shape and get an injury than you're the opposite. Yeah. Because in that scenario, it can pretty much ruin your life and prevent you from doing everything and, you know, whatever.
Which then exacerbates further because you're eating a certain way at that point. And if you're not able to do any exercise, then the being there myself, right? I mean, I had that exact scenario happen to me and gone from being, so you remember the first Alpha Challenge you did here, I did very well, so well that I decided I was going to do something stupid and I ended up hurting my back.
Yeah.
And even though I had developed some better habits, I hadn't got that kind of locked in yet fully. And so I went backwards, right? And I had to kind of regain that element because I didn't have as much of the capability to do it. And it was part of, again, if I was still, how much should I be or shouldn't be doing? It was a much smaller impact than when I was younger, and that pain would stop me from doing it. I didn't have the foundation beforehand. And I wanted to come back to something you'd said earlier around, you know, we've had a number of conversations over the years and, you know, the element of information. And you even said that yourself a couple of times throughout. It's like you've got the information. When you're ready to do it, you do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't think, again, it's a lack of information. People don't not understand what they need. Right. And sometimes that's when someone's fat and, you know, overweight and people say, we should just do this. Or, you know, why you just, and it's help. I don't know this. Right.
Yeah.
And that makes it worse sometimes, especially if that element is self-belief, where that's that feeling of, well, it's not that I don't know it. It's I can't
get myself
apply it. I can't get it. I can't find that thing that makes one to do it. And so, you know, that aspect of the knowledge, and I think, you know, that people say knowledge is power. And so knowledge is potential. Yeah. Knowledge only ever becomes power when you put it into play and use it and share it with people. Yeah. That's the true power. So that willingness to receive, and, you know, as a coach, helping people as you do to kind of figure out, well, how's the best way for them to receive it and how can I help them be in their best way to be able to then put it in use.
That's what's most important and interesting to me, because it's easy and like you get a lot of views and clicks to say, you know, you just got to get yourself to do it. You get, like, I get it, but also because I have it even to today, like on the other side of that. Well, like I know what I need to do. I've done it over and over again. Now there's been 9 months where I haven't done it. What is that? What is that thing? How do you make it more practical and a faster, like, more natural and not such of a struggle? I want to know what you think. I think what I've come to find in observing myself and observing people is there a desire there? Because that, if you don't have a desire,
You can be as good as you want.
It doesn't, yeah, you not, there's the desire. So, what I've heard and what I completely agree with is desire is God's gift to a person. Like, that is God speaking through you. So to honor those desires is very important. And I just had some weird desire that I want to be, and I think there's common desires, abundance, financially, physical health, and bigger,
Yep.
and, meaningful, deep relationships. Like, those are the common desires.
Yeah.
So I think if that's not there, because, a lot of the fitness industry is like, oh, the country is like, or the population is like this, people should be doing this. It's like, well, okay, but if they don't want it, or their desire is so quiet, deep, or they can't hear it, it doesn't matter. Plus, you don't need to be lean. Like, you can live your life, do things, and this ties into the second piece that's important, especially if you feel good.
And you're good, like you had that health piece, right? I mean, there were elements, and that's why they call things averages, right? There's a wide range. And when you get back to numbers again and everything, BMI, we just talked about 197 pounds, and I weighed in when this happened, it's 205 or something. 7.4% body fat. And I'm obese according to the BMI index.
Yeah.
What the F?
Yeah.
So there's numbers out there again that are being utilized still, and I think BMI is getting a much more view of how ineffective and it really is as before, which is that there are people who see and they value themselves on those numbers, and they value other people based on assumptions of those numbers.
And that's why. So I mean, we always used to say, and so for me, it always comes back to this kind of stuff. Is like, the strongest thing is how you treat yourself and how you treat others. That's the strongest lifting somebody else up. We used to say all the time, at the end of the day, it's all about love. And whatever somebody might think of that, but that is the truth. Through observation, like,
and I think that statement is true, and you can say that and still see all the stuff that happens in the world, because the negative things that happen are generally because of the absence.
It's a refusal to walk through the perspective. It's I'm going to choose to look at it and have this perspective, whether it's your choice or. And so the second thing that I think super important along with the desire is, if you don't feel good, you're not going to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Or you might, but the probability that you do this stuff goes down if you cannot make yourself feel good.
Yeah. And the quality of the product goes down as well. Even if you're able to produce the product, quality of the outcomes be as optimal.
Exactly. Yeah. So you could get ripped, but if underneath is you're not feeling, it's not going to be an enjoyable experience.
Or you could be slightly overweight and be perfectly at peace with yourself, as around it, and
an amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's so, and this is why it's like, you experience what you're putting into it. And like, I was, the first time I ever got ripped, 2009, it was amazing. Never experienced this. Then I got more, like, in the moments where I was like not choosing to experience the enjoyment and just the gratitude, because when you're super young, like, you don't have that perspective,
right?
It became not that great. Like, here I am looking like this and being able to do this, but it's not that great. And over time you begin to realize, like, why do you even want to do anything or have anything? Because you think you'll feel good in that thing.
Exactly.
So, but
sometimes then you seek the wrong outcomes and you don't feel happy, and you go into the
And
spiral.
you think it's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's the ingredients that you put into the thing. So I want to hear more like about you, what also along with like, and you don't have to go into details, just generality that's fine, but like different things going on in your life and how that affected what you were experiencing physically, but also emotionally, and then also in your work. So you can give a little like background. You're super accomplished at, very good at what you do. And how that's different today than it was as, you kind of went through. I don't know if this question makes sense. But
So I think it's the element of what are the things that are happening relative in your life that affects the way that you're feeling, you're operating, that's filling those elements of desire and those elements of. So the second one was more.
it's like, so what I'm trying to, because the goal of this conversation, one is to give you props because it's amazing.
Thank you.
But
also-
number one.
yeah.
Number two is like, my stuff is it's not like there's millions and hundreds of millions of views. It's if a person happens to see this, and this guy is sitting here, or this lady is sitting here, she gets something that's not just like a quip or like a little whatever bullshit statement, something that actually helps her or him make that click for today, whatever today's click is for them. Maybe that's, you know what, I'm gonna go to that CrossFit down the street and start what you started in 2013. Or maybe they've gone through that and they're in their 2020 moment where it's like, you've been doing this for a long time, you got good results, but it hasn't become an identity shift, or like it hasn't become easy for you. Maybe it's that. So that's kind of the purpose of this conversation. So what I was kind of getting at is like, in those difficult moments over the years, how did those affect your ability to do stuff? And then what was it like in 2020? Because that was really the moment where it's like identity A and identity B. And it was, I don't want to say it's like a moment, but it was like you moved over into the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah. So I think, there's a few things there. It just does relate back to what you talked about earlier, right? And that desire, right? Because I think what's going on in your life at the hard times definitely has an impact on that. Or that in itself has an impact and creates hard times, right? So I think sometimes that element, that desire, you put into a different situation,
that creates
in itself can create hard times because you're not feeling fulfilled, right? If you don't have the desire, so you've got to change a job, or something happens in that piece, and that's the one thing, the only thing that's changed in your life, yet suddenly you're not as happy as you used to be, and therefore the relationships that you have aren't as productive or as healthy and happy as they used to be, and therefore your perspective on everything isn't healthy, and it creates that element. And so I think it can go both ways. It does come back to that element of what else is going on in your life that helps to create that belief capability, that even if you have the technical skills, that you have the belief that you can do it, you want to do it, that the outcomes are doing good, or something else in your life that the belief that you can be successful there, and how. And so there have been times with work that something in work has triggered potentially something in my personal life, which then triggered something in my, or there's been times my personal life has triggered an outcome. And that's then led to kind of that cycle of disbelief, right?
At night, you're more likely to be like, all right, fuck it,
let
I'm
me just have
gonna eat
this,
a bunch of
right?
stuff.
Exactly. And that piece of eating the bunch of stuff came for me for a number of elements, right? I mean, I said part of it was understanding up here, and I didn't just mean click, because it came from doing some things at work. So our work had a leadership program, and that leadership program was based around interaction with others and how do you get the best out of the personality type that you have, because all in this element roughly fall into certain categories of behaviors, right? We have certain things we relatively do and within that construct. And those just happen to be the things that quite often at this extreme of it are called disorders, or savantism, right? And so you take a single type of personality, and at one end you have a disorder and the other end you have a savant.
Yeah.
Most of us play kind of slightly under the borderline. So well, how do you understand that and understand what are the capabilities you have to bring you up high more often? It makes it easier to be in that space. And so that again came back to me of understanding, well, here's my personality type, and that element has duality to it. High energy most of the time. That takes energy. But that recharging doesn't fit. That recharging feels like you're being lazy. You get accused of being lazy. That recharging gets you put down on it. You don't understand it and you fight against it. So it becomes harder. And so then your lows become deeper more often.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was that understanding, saying, hey, well, in order for me to be effective up here all the time, I can't rage against this, which is what I was trying to do. I have to honor it when I get to here and not wait till I get down. More often I can do, accept it and embrace that. Then I can be more active and get back into this, this element quicker and this energy quicker. And it's in those moments of raging against that who you are, it's like, I'll just eat because I know eating's going to make me feel, which it doesn't, but that then puts you in a negative circle of why did I do that? I'm a loser. I may as well just, I can't do it. I may as well just eat. And so that was understanding. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this activity, right? This isn't the root cause. This is the symptom, right? The root cause is this, right? Because I've been treating this as the root cause all my life, and that the symptom of the root cause was my weight. But it was a symptom of the symptom. And so that element really getting down and saying, well, what is it about me and what can I do better and make changes? It doesn't mean that I still don't push myself a little bit, but it does mean that I can eat the ice cream.
Yeah.
I can eat, I can incorporate those things when you don't. And I mean, an element of understanding and balances, right? It's like, hey, tomorrow, not that you do it every day, but I know tomorrow double down, and so I'm going to be able to eat X today on top of it. It's going to take. If I go up by a pound or two, I'm going to get up.
And I think that's also where having that knowledge comes in, because generally most people know what they need to do, but there is knowledge that you need, and so you understand calories, what fat actually is, and the role that food and exercise and the interplay. I would say you have a much deeper understanding, more nuanced understanding of that.
I have to thank my parents for that. Mom and Dad, thank you.
But so, that part is important too, which then it leads me to one thing that I think is very important, and I see this in your life. This is one of the beautiful things that I'm seeing now is as we get older, we get to experience more, we get to observe more people and more of their lives.
Yeah.
So one thing that I see that's really beautiful in you, and I also see that is in the successes, whatever things that I have done, is that for whatever reason, you just kept showing up and you didn't give up. And that is, so like, we might, like, because the fear or the issue is like, oh, well, what if I'm doing the wrong stuff? Well, as long as you keep the desire, if you honor the desire and you just keep showing up and you keep getting that feedback and, calibrating, you cannot help but find the answer. And so that's something that I think if somebody is struggling or if you're struggling, don't keep showing up. You will figure it out.
Yeah.
It's a matter of time.
That element, if you, it applies in a number of different cases, right? Is if you keep going, it may take you time to get to the answer, but you'll get to the answer. If you stop going, you never get to it.
No.
Right?
Exactly.
And so the outcome, maybe, the outcome of, well, if I don't get it tomorrow, what's the point? Well, if you don't do it, you're not going to get it tomorrow.
It's not going to ever happen.
Get it tomorrow. But, if you keep putting it through and then it will come. If you, again, not looking for that one thing, look at multiple things. And those things as a coach, as a mentor, and areas that I appreciate about you and talked earlier about a lot of people, it's like, well, just do it. Right. But I think one of the things that's hugely valuable in a coach, a mentor, or a leader is those people who seek to understand behind, right? And you'd be able to adapt and talk with them. So you're understanding people's psychologies and their needs, and how then you can adapt that to their needs, to help them, to put them in a place where they're going to find it as easy to drink as possible, right?
Yeah.
The whole analogy, if you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, you can bring it to water in a way that it gives it the best chance to want to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what an effective coach is.
I like that, because everyone always says you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Well, as my job, my role as in this world, as I've seen it, is it's my job to at least take you there.
Yeah.
And to continue, and if you tell me that I really want to drink from this, can keep guiding you back, and maybe you get a little taste and then you get distracted. But I had not ever thought of it in that way. One client comes to mind right now, also been here since 2016, and she's lost and kept off 50 pounds, but in her head, it's not good enough because she didn't lose the other 20 pounds, which she's vacillated back and forth to. And sometimes I sit there and I think, because it's easy to sell a lot of product, especially in fitness, and not care. I can't get myself to do that because I'm like, I want you to get it.
Yeah.
And so I've thought about this person for the last, 6-7 years. And currently we're at that place again of okay, well, we're close, but we're struggling and we can't get ourselves to do the thing. And she is one of the she knows all the shit. She could coach if she wanted to, and she would be one of the best coaches. That's why I'm saying, what are the things that get us to actually do the stuff?
Yeah.
And I sit there and I think, well, what can I do to contribute to that? Because I know it's not at the end of the day, it's her.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, I don't know where I was going with that, but it just popped into my head.
Yeah, and I think in that space, right, as a coach, as a leader, you have that capability, but you can't get inside someone else's head, right? You've got to be the one who shares it with, gets it out there. Sometimes we're afraid of what we want. We're afraid of what will happen if we actually get it, right? And so sometimes that's why we get so close to the edge, and then we freeze. So maybe there's another one trying to figure out, is this something
100%. Well, I don't want to go into the details, but that's 100% part of it. And I'll share my version of that because
I have mine too.
And let's talk about those two, because I had this conversation with her and I was like, look, you and I are exactly the same. For you, it's fitness. For me, it's business. I'm not the world's greatest businessman. I know all the shit.
Yeah.
I can and I grew up in this, and I've made, a lot of money, XYZ. but I struggle. So if it was in the case of working out, getting to the gym and not skipping workouts and overeating every day, in my business body, that's what I do every single day. And it's a struggle for me. So I was telling her, I'm like, look, there's this book that I've been wanting and working on since 2016. You may know the name of it. It's called The Burrito Diet. I have the evidence and the validation that this thing could transform my life with the success that it would have. I've seen examples of this in various other people's. They finally wrote the book or they made the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Their life was never the same. I see this and I don't go for it. What goes through my mind, if I'm 100% objective, I don't know if I can truly be objective, but it's like, well, it needs to be perfect. So I need to be focused. So I'll do it later because right now I need to go to the store. Oh, I need to go meet with Brett. Oh, I got a client. I'll do it after. I continuously find a reason to not write fucking 2 sentences.
Yeah.
And your book will be done in a month, right? Whatever it is. And here we are almost 7-8 years later, and that's my point was like, I was telling her, it's just I do the same thing in a different area, but it's exactly the same. And like you said, afraid of, well, what if someone leaves a bad comment? Or what if it doesn't sell? What if I write it and nothing happens? Well, so going back to working out, like, well, as long as you keep showing up, you get the feedback to continuously make progress. Your progress to 200 pounds, 7% body fat was not a straight line. My line to all the stuff that I've been able to do was not a straight line. It's just been a very long time, but it still has not been a straight line. So, like, and I want to know what your version of that is.
Well, I think irony is I'm a couple of years behind you, but I started writing my book in 2021. And this last job was supposed to give me all the time. I'm going to spend 2 hours every day, an hour to 2 hours every day working on my book and have it done. And I have had a separate period where I've just been blocked, to do it. And it's corresponded with something else that's been happening in my life as well. That's kind of the stress. And
yeah.
So there's things that you talked about, they kind of combine in that piece. So I have that, and part of this, also the scaredness of, well, what happens if it works? What happens if it doesn't, right? Afraid of both out. And so I'm working on it. I had said 2023 is a published year, but 2024 will be a published year. And it's just a matter of just kind of, okay, well, at least just get the first version out there and get it to edit. Let someone kind of come back at it, and then you can piece, because the piece you talked about was feedback, right? And that's the element, right? Coming into the gym, working with you and getting feedback, and then being open to hearing the feedback. That was part of it, right? Is that you can be told the same thing over again, hear it, maybe even understand it, but not accept it, right? And it's when you get that acceptance, understanding, and owning the feed that you can make those changes. But if you never get out there and you in front of someone else, you never get the feedback to begin with. Your own mind is your feedback, which is such a limited set of data.
Yeah. I wonder, I want to know what you think, but I've done a lot of work on these things, since forever, like 2010. And I'm very confident in that this is the answer. But I just want to hear your perspective on it. And I've hired some pretty wonderful people to guide me. how much of this is just remembering everything is okay. You're okay. You don't need to do or be any. No, like, it doesn't matter. Like, all the stuff that we're doing is all made up,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah.
we treat it
Everything
as
in the world is made up.
everything is made up, but we treat it like these are laws of physics. Like,
Right.
you have to make X amount. You need to be successful. You need to be number one. Those are nice. There's some draw to that, but how much of it is you accepting what you grew up with and then feeling I'm a piece of shit, and remembering like where I try to get to is like, you're okay. If you don't do a fucking damn thing, you can eat and you can sleep, and those are the only physical laws that you need to obey. And other than that, it's all preference. And so how much of that?
Well, I'd take that. And I would, part of what you talked about, and I'd add into that, right? That element of expectation. Do you feel okay? Do you feel living up to a piece? In the area that you don't feel that you're a successful lady, even though you know all the information and have the capability and grew up in the environment, is the environment you grew up in. My father was a very successful businessman. And so I would challenge to a certain element that because of that expectation, that even though you say you're okay, there's still these familial expectations that just really difficult to accept and beyond to the point of, yes, it would be nice for my father or blah, blah, blah. You got to say for it, well, no, wait a minute, just because he was great at it doesn't mean I have to, right? And so in that element that's your stuck area, it's potentially, I would think, because that's that area that you haven't, even though you tell yourself you're not as okay as you tell yourself.
Because the evidence would say that you're, that's really, that's the stuff. But I also go, I'm like, well, you can simplify it.
Mhm.
We can figure it out, and like things can make sense and all that. But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, why not just find, why not? And I don't know one or the other, which comes first or how much it interplays. But one thing with like working out, I tell someone like, hey, why don't you just trust me and do what I tell you to do for the next 3 months and then decide. Then hindsight is 20/20. And if you can do that, which is very difficult because I tried to do it.
Yeah.
But if you do that, then a lot of the things you just not concerned about anymore. Like, they just fall away. So
I think there's an element that aspect of being able to accept and trust and just allow yourself to just do. To a point, there's so much pressure on our time, right? That if we can't tell up front, we're going to get something out of this, it's difficult to make that choice because we've got so many artificial and true, in some respects, artificial pressures in the market. More so than I think ever. The choice is good things, right? But then it makes us make rash decisions, or we've got this really short-term mentality of if I can't tell up front. And so it does take an element of faith, trust, vulnerability, which is another hard thing for people
very
want
difficult.
to do. Isn't encouraged as much as it should be to be able to put yourself in that space. And yet I think from an evidentiary piece, right, understanding it that way, right, that let me suspend belief, you follow path and trust that I'm going to get to this outcome, being shown that this outcome is possible if I follow this. So if I don't question everything, I mean, there are times question you tell me this and say, oh, but blah, 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 right? And maybe I still got something, but it was the elements of, okay, I've achieved the result I've achieved doing the things the way I've done them, right? And so I can likely only expect to achieve the similar result. If I want a different result, let me try something different. right? And that way I may receive the same result, slightly worse result, probably not if I'm taking it from a trusted coach who's proven it, but there's a higher likelihood to get a better result before. And so that element of feedback and openness, right? I think that's, we're so closed off to feedback quite often because it's defensiveness
tough.
and
It's
how
tough.
it's delivered.
I'll be the first to admit that it has been very difficult to receive any kind of feedback, in various different things. So that leads me to, I guess we can kind of wrap up on this, but I think this is we're getting further and further to the foundational piece, in a winding path, just like everything.
Like life.
But our reality, your reality, my reality, whoever reality, is not factual. It's based on our perception. And our perception is obviously shaped by what we've heard, what we grew up with, what we watch, what we listen to, and which then, creates a talk track in your head, which you repeat.
Yes.
And the more you repeat it,
It becomes true.
concrete, and the more you see it. And we used to coach.
And you manifest it.
Yeah, and then you manifest it. We used to talk about the Pygmalion effect, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so, I don't even like to say, very difficult to do. I'm so practiced in thinking X, Y, and Z, and it makes me feel X, Y, and Z, that it's automatic. And we'll use fat loss for example. Like, what's a common thought? I just can't do it because I love food too much, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it never works for me. I must have a slow metabolism. And you repeat it, you quit, you cement it. Well, if you could practice a different thought, different feeling, results from that thought, and it's gonna go away because you're really practiced at whatever. If someone's a complainer, it's not that they're a bad person. It's just that they've become so practiced in finding the negative that they're world class at it.
Yeah.
And so if I can begin to practice, hey, writing books is easy and it just comes to me, and man, it's going to feel so amazing when I write this book because I'm going to, people will love it and I'll sell tons of copies and my life will be different. And if I can allow myself to, what does that feel like? And I begin to practice that thought and that feeling, I think very smart people are saying that it's in the Bible, it's in, every religious and spiritual master throughout history and philosophers. So it's not like I'm claiming I figured out some
brand new
magical
thing. It's realizing that is.
We've come to that conclusion ourselves. So like, I feel that is the foundational piece.
There is that element of our capability of change rests within us, and does come from like the combination of nature and nurture, but hugely, as you said, of how we've then interpreted that, repeat that story to ourselves, because we listen to the person who is talking to us next. And so it's how do we go through nature and nurture. Some people have grown with a very negative talk and don't treat themselves anywhere in the way that they would treat them. Some people treat both themselves and other people that way. And then some people are able to treat themselves and others with love and respect. It'd be wonderful and interesting to kind of try to document the monologue that each of those different groups of people has and truly understand that. But we all really only have a good understanding of our own monologue. And you're right. I mean, it's those times where I've kind of been able to suspend some of that self-doubt let things become better, that ability to change the thought, the ability for me and that kind of changing from me taking an extra couple hours of sleep, it isn't a bad thing. It's actually what allows me to be who I am, right? Rather than saying, lazy, I should be at work now, I'm disappointing people, why can't I just do this? I know what I should be doing. Same activity, different talk track. And so it's like you said, what do we make up, right? And those things that we made up and influenced us a long, long time ago, you have the ability to, with practice and time and energy and
change it.
desire,
You just a different
manifest
reality. And if you like you're saying about, taking rest, it's like, well, if you're listening to anything on Instagram or YouTube, you're probably going to hear a lot of, well, and now it's gone to the other extreme when people make fun of it too, but it's like, well, you should wake up at 4 a.m. and you should do X, Y, Z, you should do a sauna, and then you should do this, and then, other people are sleeping and I'm hustling. So I'm not saying don't do any of those things. I don't care, but is it yours? Is it yours?
Yeah.
Or are you taking it, accepting it as truth, and then feeling shame and guilt, feeling shitty, and now it's going to be tough for you to go do whatever you want to do because
you're shame and guilt.
It's shame and guilt.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Very important. Go ahead.
I was going to say the one thing, a common theme that comes, we've talked about a lot, is change. Change is different. People look at change because of just things that have happened. Life's change is often associated with negativity and outcomes, things like that. And a lot of that, I think, is because how we're prepared for change. People set it up. People who change from like a mass event all at the same time experience things commonality, could change in a business, family, things like that. Parents or leaders create an idea for change, and then they bring up people through it. The tendency, unfortunately, is they've gone through the change in their mind already. There's a lot of time getting to that point. And then they declare the change to everybody else, and they like, hey, come on, you need to be over here now. When the reality is everyone else has to have time to go through that same psychology that people came up did, but don't get the time for. And so our experience with change isn't as good as it can be. And people kind of get this element that this person, I can't change. This is who I am.
People will literally say that.
I've had this quote, and I picked up as stupid as it is. I think listening to like Casey Kasem in the top 40 when it was 15 or 16 years ago on a Sunday morning after a surf club in New Zealand. But there was just something that was said at the time that just stuck with me ever since. And I morphed a lot from there, but it comes down to this element. In some respects, the more we change, we stay the same. I say that because we're born as these changing creatures. Every day, every minute, we're taking in new information and we're changing with it. We're adapting with it, and we're able to be better with doing that most. Sometimes some people get to a certain point like, I've stopped, can't change it. And that's just being human. Stop being human. Because being human is to change, to adapt, to learn, to take in and keep going that way. It's that feedback piece, and how do you go through change is a skill that doesn't get taught as much. And sometimes that fear gets associated with it.
Absolutely. Not sometimes, most of the times. And this is why, so I tell people this, like if I bring on anybody as a advisor, consultant, vendor, a property manager, anybody I'm talking to or associating, and you can put that thing in there. Okay. So I was saying you can put that thing in there.
Let's keep it up.
Yeah. We're about to finish
this thing here.
Yeah. If you're leading me through this thing or having this conversation with a focus on what could go wrong and like the fear side of it, I don't want to do, like, I'm not interested in that. property managers who are like, well, these people could do. I'm like, no, I don't. Like, they could also be wonderful fucking
people.
human beings. I have amazing tenants, wonderful tenants. But if you would give in to what is practical and then I would be fucking terrified and shitting my pants all day because of all the things that could go wrong. And I've had shitty tenants, but even that, hindsight's 2020, things always work out. And you don't know that as you're going through it. So yeah, I think so. Two things. We'll end it on this. One is I think that this is what this is what's common, but does not mean it's normal or natural. You're a very loving and compassionate person. I think if we're, one by one, whoever, the more loving and compassionate we all become, I don't think we grow up with all these issues and whatnot. Like, you don't grow up. You're not born being like, oh my God, this, that. No, you learn that. So one, I would say, is like, let's do our best. Right now, I'm going to consider it's 3 people here because, people always say, hey guys, but there's only one person watching. So it's just 3 people here. But if us 3 and whoever else can have that love and compassion for ourselves, and then for the people that we're around, I know you have a lot of people that work with you, your family, the places you work out at, and same to me. If we can just be that for ourselves, that's change. That's what matters. I had an employee who's been fucking up, but he's trying, but he's making stupid mistakes, and I have to reverse myself and not get mad. This is as simple as it was. I texted him, I got upset, and I was like, my God. And afterwards I left it, and I still told him, like, you can do this, you're a smart guy. And then I left, and I just texted him, you can do it. I don't know what impact that will have, but I know that, that's how I want to relate to somebody. I don't want them to feel like, having someone believe it and be encouraged, I think, is very important. Very important. So that's one. And the second thing is what piece of advice or thoughts you would want to leave, our third friend here with, if they're trying to make that change, whether that's physically, financially, or relationship wise.
Yeah. I would come back into that element again of none of those things can be as solid as they can be if you're personally, mentally happy with yourself. And it doesn't mean you have to be happy every day of the week, but happy in an element of understanding, right? And so spend some time, invest a little bit of time in that self, and that will benefit you in all these other areas, right? It'll benefit you in the gym. It'll benefit you in the bank account, benefit you in place of business, benefit you in the bedroom, whichever way that happens, sleep or otherwise, right? It'll benefit you in your relationships, right? And so those other things really are a combination of 2 elements. It's your mental health and your physical health, and both have a corollary element. You can't be as solid as possible in one without the other. It can be good in one or the other, not as solidly great as it could be. And so I think that piece of, it's scary to look inside yourself, right? It's an element of, again, taking acceptance, taking change, taking charge of the talk track, because that's really what it came down to for me, was having that understanding allowed me to take charge.
And I just, to add one piece to that is, there's people like we're at all over the place. We just don't, the negative and the fear stuff is louder. But there's, people at your work, people at, in community, be around or just allow yourself to be around the loving and compassionate people in your, in your environments, in your circles. And it will, I'm not saying it's the one thing, but it will definitely help.
One thing.
It is one of the things. So, dude, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
This was great for me.
Thanks.